Hello.
Hiya.
Welcome back to the Pitlane Collective Podcast for episode number 10.
Woo!
We have spent at least 9 hours, 10 hours sat here chatting absolute nonsense.
It feels like longer.
And I think we're going to do it again. So thank you for, supporting us as we reach this milestone 10th episode. There's still no Grand Prix. We are in the wasteland of Grand Prix. The last one was about 4 years ago.
Yeah. Was it supposed to be the Chinese?
I think it was, yeah.
On Sunday. So that was a bit sad.
Yeah, and there was no race, unfortunately. I genuinely don't know whether China's going to come back in the next couple of years.
Is it still due to COVID?
I think so. But I don't know whether they're being super strict about it, and it'll just... Who knows, it'll be back next year, now I've said that. Yeah. But I would like to see it back. But yeah, so we're in this kind of wasteland of just
nothingness.
Nothing. And you're very tired as well.
A bit.
Josh has had a late night and an early morning with the baby. So we've got a couple of things that we're going to discuss on this episode. And then we kind of threw it open to you guys as well. And asked for some sort of talking points that you might want us to discuss. You'd want us to discuss things.
Got some good stuff.
We did. We got some great points. I don't know whether we'll be able to add anything to it.
Doubt it.
Yeah. So, but thank you for everyone who did write in or sent us little messages and stuff. We'll try and cover them all. If we don't, it's just because there were quite a few and we are pushed for time. So, without further ado, let's get stuck in. Before we get to those Q&As, we went to a racetrack last week.
We did. It was really good.
Yeah. So British GT was at Oulton Park.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided, do you know what, we're going to go down. I've been a couple of times before. You've never been to a racetrack before, have you?
Not a real one. No.
How did you find it?
It was really good. It was nothing quite like the sound of a big old Mazzy engine going past you really fast. It was very wet, though.
Yeah. We didn't pick the best weather, did we? It was also like it was very wet, but also quite sunny. It was very stereotypically British weather.
Yeah,
it threw it down.
Although it did make for some quite good racing at points.
Yeah, it did. So we kind of positioned ourselves, like Oulton Park. You can pretty much stand anywhere around the circuit. We managed to get a good spot where we could see two parts of the track at once. We could see the cars coming through clearways, which is one of the sort of fast corners at Oulton, and shooting off. And then we also got the chicane on the way back again.
That was where all the action was, wasn't it?
And we saw some interesting moves, didn't we? Especially as the rain came in and the track went from dry to wet. And then
cars just completely missing the chicane, cars making contact, cars spinning out, ending up in the gravel. I've seen it all. And I think I caught some of it on camera, so it'll be in this episode at some point. Yeah,
we'll have it kind of running alongside us somewhere. Maybe it's already running. Maybe you're seeing it anyway.
And I became a vlogger.
And Josh tried to do a vlog intro, so
make sure you check that out.
We'll put it in as a little blooper at the end of this, because to be fair, it was a valiant first effort.
What you've got to understand is I'd never done this before. It was very windy, very rainy, and I was probably hungry or something.
Yeah. You gave it a good go.
I did.
At the point you were like, I'm just gonna go. I'm just gonna pop off here. I'm just gonna do a video.
Behind, I think it was behind the toilet.
Behind like a
where can no one see me? Because I just where can no one see me?
And I think you did a good job.
Cheers.
But so we'll add that in at the end. But then we didn't really carry on the vlog, did we?
We didn't do anything. We didn't do anything.
So maybe in future, well, maybe it's not. We're not cut out for that kind of.
I'm still gonna keep going though because I think it's funny.
Yeah, do it anyway. So we'll chuck that in as a little blooper at the end of the episode. We did quite a few things there. We managed to get into the pit lane. Walk along the pits. They do like a kind of at Oulton Park, and I guess like at most tracks that they're doing this kind of racing, they open the pit lane and you can just go in and kind of walk along, and then the cars are in the garages and the drivers are outside signing autographs and stuff like that. That was really cool.
Yeah, it was.
We went along there, and then we kind of just had to kind of shelter from the elements in the afternoon, didn't we? So we went back to the car, parked it up on a hill, and got the same view. Yeah, tuned into the radio for the circuit and listened to some.
He was a good commentator as well, wasn't he?
Great commentary.
He was not.
There were lots of. I mean, if you think we mumble and we ramble,
wow,
that was quite mumbly and rambly, but it was a great experience and so good that we're going to do it again. We're going to go to Silverstone, which is quite exciting. Neither of us have been to an F1 track.
Very exciting, because I believe the Aston Martin HQ is there, isn't it?
It is. There's
get to see that as well.
A lot of stuff based around Silverstone. So we're going to head up in about 3 weeks' time, I think it is.
First weekend of next month, I think it is.
Yeah, first weekend of May. So we'll try and record some stuff again. Maybe we'll do a Josh vlog part 2.
You'll get that.
And we'll try and sort of document the experience. But it's going to be the first time either of us have been to a Grand Prix circuit. I've been to sort of smaller races a bit before, but this is really the first time that either of us have got into watching something that isn't really F1.
Isn't racing. Formula 1. And it was still really exciting. You could argue more exciting than some of the F1 races.
Yeah, it was great. So Silverstone.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that.
I just hope the price of a burger and chips isn't more than the price of admission.
Yeah. It was quite expensive.
Take a packed lunch.
The old foods. Yeah, we're going to be grabbing some packed lunches and stuff in some flasks. Because, you'll definitely have to take out a loan or sell a kidney to buy some food there. But what a great experience and what a great day, even if the weather wasn't on our side, even if we couldn't necessarily get to the points in the circuit we wanted to view. So really excited for Silverstone.
I seen a lot, because I walked off for a little bit, didn't I? I wandered off sometimes. Found myself on like the pit straight.
Yeah.
Turn 1. So I seen quite a lot of the track, to be fair. It was really good. Because that was, I went to the pit straight when the single seater racing was on, which was really cool.
We should say, I guess, because we went along and we went for the British GT.
Yeah.
But if you're not familiar with it, there's loads of support races going on as well.
There's about 15 or 16 races, wasn't there?
Yeah, there's a lot of races through the day. So British GT themselves do 2-hour-long races. But then there was the Ginetta series. There was I can't remember the name of it, but it's single-seaters. There's 2 different categories of them. So there's basically racing all day.
Yeah, it was non-stop.
It was a great experience. So we're both pumped for Silverstone and keep an eye out on the pod for that. Talking about Silverstone, I've got a point that I wanted to discuss, a little bit of F1 news around historic Formula 1 tracks. As we know, obviously Silverstone is one of those tracks. It's been on the calendar for billions of years.
Surely the historic track, isn't it?
Well,
surely the track, maybe Monaco.
One of. But there's a good selection of historic tracks. And some of the recent news is that the CEO of Formula 1 Group, Stefano Domenicali, who used to be team principal for Ferrari back in the day, has basically come out and said that historic tracks need to prove their worth to stay on the Formula 1 calendar, that they're not guaranteed to stay on there.
Big shout.
Which is, I think it got blown up quite a lot in the news, obviously, and people kind of took stuff and made sound bites of it. So I wanted to dig into it a little bit more. And he's essentially saying that just to be a historic circuit doesn't guarantee that you have
just
the
because
right
you
to
called this.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you have the right to be on the calendar. But what's quite worrying is that he's essentially saying that historic venues and any kind of racetrack has to align with Formula 1 and their views and how they want to kind of run things in order to remain on the calendar. And what's an interesting point that I wanted to bring up about that is basically he's essentially saying that you've got to comply with what we're setting out to be on the calendar and that you're not guaranteed to stay on it. Lots of new circuits that have come onto the calendar in the past sort of even 5 years or so have been sort of street circuits based in either the US or the Middle East, and they are obviously they've all got long contracts with Formula 1. I've written out a couple of the lengths of the contracts here. I mean, Qatar is contracted till the end of 2023.
Wow.
2032. Saudi Arabia 2030. Abu Dhabi 2030. They've got a lot of money to throw at Formula 1 to guarantee their place. Whether they're particularly great tracks or not is up for debate. But a lot of the historic circuits, their contracts are expiring pretty soon. And quite a few of them have come out and said that it's very difficult to make a profitable race, which is bonkers when you think about it.
Yeah.
Spa, they're after this year, their contract expires, and there's a lot of talk about whether they'll stay on the calendar at all.
That would be such a lot.
Which is mad, isn't it? Suzuka, Silverstone, their contracts expire end of next year. And then the year after, Monaco's, Monza, and Interlagos in Brazil, their contracts expire as well. So they are, like, I feel like if you were to make a list of the circuits at F1, most of them are going to be on it.
Yeah, 100%.
And I would argue that Abu Dhabi and Jeddah and Qatar probably aren't going to be on it. They've given us some decent races, but the sort of the historical tracks, what brings so much prestige to Formula One.
You ask the layman who knows nothing about Formula One to name some Formula One track. They're going to name a couple of those ones, aren't they?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They are the circuits. So where is F1 going? Are we going to see?
I was going to ask. So, do you agree with what he's saying, or do you oppose what he's saying, or are you somewhere in between?
I don't necessarily fully disagree with him, but I do think that Formula One should be making a massive effort to make sure those circuits remain on the calendar.
So, as a new blood into the sport, I suppose I haven't got the same attachment to these tracks.
Yeah,
they're still great tracks. Spa is one of my favorite tracks on the calendar. What I would say is it not for the sport to continue to grow and evolve? Sometimes maybe you've got to let go of the past a bit. So, for instance, Monaco is coming into the sport is probably one of the most controversial tracks on the grid, because it seems like the drivers love it, but a lot of the fans hate it because it's quite a dull race.
Oh yeah.
Would anyone apart from the drivers be that upset if that wasn't on the calendar?
Yeah, that's where you get into that weird situation of like, is it like, are we just keeping it for its historical
just because
significance?
of what it is? Whereas I would be more upset if Spa was gone, or Suzuka, or even Silverstone. Even though I don't like the track as much, it still, for me, produces better racing than Monaco, Monza as well, and Interlagos. But I think I don't think you can be 100% for or against the point of what he's saying. I think there's a middle ground in there somewhere. I think you've got to hold on to what makes the sport, and what makes the sport so grand. But also, there's got to also be room to grow, and move on.
Definitely.
However, I don't think the way they're going with all these races popping up in the US. Obviously, we haven't raced at Vegas yet, but I don't like the Miami Grand Prix one bit.
No.
I don't think they're the right way to go. I think it dilutes the sport into being more for money and more not really so much about the racing, but the spectacle of it, which I don't think is the right way to go either.
That's where it gets tricky in it, because I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to expand to the US.
The US market's massive, isn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, it's when do you start sacrificing the sport for the spectacle is a great way of putting it. For me, even though, I haven't been watching F1 that long. I mean, it's been like 10 years or so, but there'll be people some of you guys will have been watching for way longer than that. And it goes back in families even. Dad's watching it, grandparents watching it, that sort of stuff. I just think when you get a sport that has gone on as long as Formula One, there is so much prestige attached to those old tracks. There's so much history involved in them. I would be, for Formula One to leave those tracks behind in favor of street circuits around, like Jeddah or Miami or things like that. It would just be a proper shame. I think to lose all that connection to that history, in favor of essentially money, would be such a massive, massive shame. They're some of the best racetracks in the world for a reason. But the connection that you can draw, I mean, I've just pulled up a couple of notes about Spa here, but the first ever race at Spa as part of, Spa has held races before Formula One existed. Yeah. It was just a World Manufacturers Championship, but the first ever Grand Prix held there was in 1925. So 98 years of racing, and it's only missed 6 years since Formula One actually began back in 1950. There is so much history attached to places like that. I think
Spa, out of all the ones on that list, maybe Silverstone as well, are the ones that should definitely always stay.
Yeah.
because they are massive names, but they also produce some great racing.
I just think that the F1 have got to do their job to try and make sure that those places stay. I don't know whether they can necessarily afford to play hardball and go like, well, if you're not going to front the cash, then we're not going to host races there. I think it's a big shame. Ultimately, will it affect Formula One? Probably not. Like, it'll keep growing if they hold races, and the spectacle of Formula One, as you said, that will keep going no matter where they hold the races. But it would be a massive shame if tracks like that dropped off the calendar. It would be like, I've got a little note here, it would be literally like the ATP Tour not playing at Wimbledon. It'd be like IndyCar not coming to the Indy 500. It would just,
or the FA Cup final not being at Wembley.
It would just be that sort of piece that's missing.
Well, one more thing I will say on that before we move on is we've been talking about we really want to go to a Formula One race, and if you look at that list, so you got Spa, Suzuka, Silverstone, Monaco, Monza, and Interlagos. I think all of them have come up when we've said which one would we most like to go to.
100%, yeah.
So that says a lot, doesn't it?
They're the special tracks. Like, with the best will in the world, I don't think either of us are sitting here going, I really want to go to Qatar, to Losail International Circuit.
I mean, I'll be honest, I love the Saudi track, but no.
Yeah, it's great fun to race on, and I get that the drivers enjoy driving it, but I think as a fan, the experiences at places, Silverstone, even obviously local to us, or local-ish in the same country as us.
Fairly local.
They're the tracks that you want to go to, and you want to go to circuits, or I want to go to circuits that I know, like Fangio has won at and raced at, Senna's been there. Like, there's just that sort of connection to history that is super important, and I'd hate for Formula One to lose that.
To lose it.
It'd be a real shame. But that is just my opinion. That's just our opinion, I guess. What do you guys think? Let us know what your thoughts are about sort of historic Formula One tracks not necessarily being on the calendar anymore. Should F1 be doing more to keep them?
Or does the sport become stagnant? If you keep them and they just get in because of their name, does the sport just get stuck in where it is and never evolve or grow?
Yeah. Do the circuits need to do more? That's kind of the news point that I sort of saw this last week and thought that'd be interesting to talk about. Because I totally agree with you that there are some circuits, Monaco, for example, where the racing isn't necessarily a spectacular event. I mean, unless you've got Ferrari at the front.
Well, yeah.
And you can watch and see how they mess it up. Or occasionally you get weather and things like that. But the race isn't spectacular. The qualifying's where it's at Monaco. And does that need to be swapped out? Maybe. I've seen people saying that they're not, it's not an enjoyable Grand Prix to watch, and I get that.
We've been looking at it from the fans' perspective, but if you look at it from the driver's perspective, the best drivers in the world will want to win at Monaco, and they will want to win at all these tracks. So I suppose for Formula One to attract the best drivers as well and keep the best drivers, they need to sort of cater for them as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. It's just you look at circuits like that, you look at Silverstone, you look at Interlagos, and then this is where like series like Formula E and stuff like that for me aren't as special, because they're just, Formula E is all street circuits, and it's all just essentially car parks. I know they do race at a couple of tracks, so they do Monaco and they do Mexico, I think I've seen as well, but loads of them are just, it's just kind of a slightly unrecognizable car park that they've put barriers in and they're racing around, and it would be a big shame to sort of lose that from the calendar. Who knows? It's definitely an interesting time for Formula One. I hope that they can sort those contracts out and keep those tracks, because it would be a big shame to have a Formula One season without them. I mean, a Formula One season without Spa, I don't know how that'd feel.
And try telling Hamilton he's not going to be racing at Silverstone anymore.
Exactly. So
it's not going to go down well, is it? So
we'll see. But yeah, that was the little sort of bite of news, which has taken a lot longer for us to go through than I expected. So what we'll do, we'll really quickly just jump into this Q&A that we discussed. Obviously, you guys have sent in some talking points. We're going to go over them quite quickly, so that this episode isn't like 2.5 hours long. Thank you for sending stuff in. Please feel free to keep sending more stuff in. Just send us a DM on Instagram or pop us an email, and we'll try and kind of cover them off Maybe we'll group them together, and every couple of episodes we'll go through them. But let's jump into these. What's the first question that we've been asked, Josh?
First one from @Lance Stroll #1. Wonder who they like. Lance Stroll and why he doesn't deserve all the hate. I'm assuming they want us to just talk about Lance Stroll.
So I think there's a little bit of bias there. I'm getting a little bit of bias. I get it. I think like this is the year for Lance to prove himself. I think he's got a car that is capable of fighting at the top now, and if he can't,
he's also got a partner, a teammate who is so like, even if he drives at his best, he's still gonna look inferior to his teammate.
But if he can do well, if he can mix it up with the Ferraris and the Mercedes, and if he can keep that going, I think he'll definitely prove himself a lot more. Because I think there's a solid driver in there.
Yeah, he does have a lot to prove, though. He hasn't really done anything yet.
I think he definitely doesn't deserve all of the hate he gets, and I hate in general. No one deserves that.
No,
but definitely there's a lot of sort of people criticizing him, and I would say, in my opinion, that a lot of that criticism can be valid because he has great performances, but he has a lot of like kind of off races or off weekends where he'll make awkward mistakes. He might like crash. He might do, like there's as a Vettel fan, there's been occasions where I've been watching Vettel racing him, and there was the incident in Russia where Lance just kind of put Vettel in the wall. There was like Brazil, like he does just make sort of weird mistakes sometimes.
See, you've come at that as a totally different angle than I would.
Okay.
I would say a lot of his hate that he gets comes from the fact that his dad, he's a paid driver. His dad is not a very likable character at all. And he kind of is guilty of coming across a bit like a petulant child sometimes.
Yeah.
So are a lot of the drivers, by the way. But
do you think that was fair? Do you think all that sort of that piling on him for having a rich dad who has essentially bought a team and put him in it is fair?
No, I don't think it is fair. Because if my dad was super rich and wanted to do that, I would be straight in the car.
Yeah.
But I can also see why people have an issue with paid drivers. It's almost like you haven't fully earned your place. It's being bought for you.
I would say, though, that I do feel like he's kind of proved his place on the grid.
He's obviously a good driver.
Yeah.
I'm not saying for 1 minute he doesn't deserve to be anywhere near a Formula One car. It's just the way it happened.
Yeah.
I think people have got the problem with
it. Kind of sets it up wrong, really, doesn't it? It sets him up at a disadvantage that, like, he's open to all that criticism immediately as soon as it happens. I think it's cool that, like, clearly his dad is a massive race fan. Yeah. And I think, like, racing wise, he would have probably bought a Formula One team whether or not Lance was driving, because he's been, he's had his own race cars in the past. He's raced himself in the past. Mm-hmm. He's clearly super into it.
Yeah. And he's obviously making some great decisions
and Aston, doing well. So, and let's not forget as well, he bought Aston at the time, Racing Point, when they were bankrupt or they were going under. Mm. So, full props to him for that. So he doesn't deserve all the hate he gets, does he?
No, I don't think he does. But the door is open to it, and I can see why the door's open.
Yeah. So this is the season. This is the season for him to prove a lot of the people who sort of will talk about him negatively wrong. And if he can do well, and if he can hold a candle to Alonso, then people have got to.
One more thing, though, because we said we were going to let's do these. What if he doesn't? Will his dad drop him from his own team?
No.
So I think that's the bit that people have got a problem with.
Yeah.
Other drivers are fighting for their life almost every season and fighting for their seat. People like him aren't.
In fairness, I do think that if he performs badly, Lawrence Stroll isn't, I don't think, the only person who gets to decide whether Lance has a seat.
I think he gets the final say, though.
But there'd be a lot of pressure if he's performing really badly. Say if he goes through 6-8 races where he doesn't finish and Alonso's up on the podium every single time, there would be a lot of internal pressure, and it that would come up while he's performing well. I don't think people can do that, but so really I think what we're saying is, like, the situation that he's in has opened him up to a lot of criticism,
But it's not necessarily his fault.
Yeah.
In fact, it's not his
There's
fault.
not a lot he can do about it, really.
No.
He's in that situation. I think any of us, hand on heart, would, if we had parents who would offer him that opportunity, we'd take it. So you can't
100%.
criticise him for
Nope.
doing that. Driving wise, he's got the car now. Let's see what he can do. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on him. Lance Stroll, number 1.
The next one comes from the Racing Clubhouse.
Okay.
And it's, will we ever see the Nordschleife, or will we ever see a Nordschleife type track in Formula One again? In brackets, a track longer than 4 miles.
Oh, I'd love that,
Be great.
I'd love that. There's so many logistical challenges. I know that, like, having longer tracks basically just means you've got to have more marshals, more, like, facilities, to try and, like, how long is a safety car going to last? Like, all that sort of stuff. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think Spa is the longest on the calendar currently.
I don't know, but if I had to guess, I would say it was, because it just looks the longest.
Just by the number of laps that they run.
Yeah.
They tend to not run, I think it's just 44 laps in Spa. Will we ever see one? Sadly, no, I don't think so.
I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it there.
It would be
I love that track
so good.
So much.
The Nordschleife is probably the most famous track in the world. It's definitely one of the biggest physically, but also it's got, we're talking before about history and all the kind of like legacy and all the sort of the little goosebumps when people talk about it. The Nordschleife is one of them. It's right up there.
And if you play racing games, there's no funner track to drive than that one.
Like 80 odd corners.
And it's so funny because you'll mess up on turn 1 and know you've got about 10 minutes left to start the lap again.
You do the lap. What a track. Sadly, I don't think Formula One's going to be racing at something like that in the future. I'd love them to do longer tracks. I think mixing it up, having short tracks and having long tracks makes racing exciting, makes each Grand Prix slightly different, gives it unique characteristics, but I can't see it happening.
I actually watched the video the other day of Schumacher lapping that track. Wow. So cool.
It's a brilliant circuit. It's one that we have a sort of ambition to go and drive at some point. And if we do, Josh will vlog it.
I will, because I'll probably be dead good at it by then.
Yeah.
And if I'm not, I never will be.
But yeah, sadly, I don't think so. Next on the list of questions, we've got Mitchell Drysdale, who's asked, what do you both consider is the best racing right now? He's given us a couple of examples: IMSA, IndyCar, Formula One, WEC, and then we've also got obviously things like Formula E. Mitchell, we're
cards on the table.
We're really terrible in this, in that both of us essentially support Formula One and watch Formula One, and that is our kind of racing. That's as far as our racing experience really goes, isn't it? I mean, especially you got into Formula One a couple of years ago, and you've been swept up in it, but
I haven't quite branched out just yet.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because I feel like, I'm Formula One's the best.
No,
it's just the one I've been swept up in. I'm sure all them like disciplines, I've got great racing. It's just I haven't branched out yet.
Yeah, so
I've been quite lazy.
Neither of us have branched out and actually watched all the races.
The only other one I've got to say is the British GT.
Yeah,
and I would say Formula One's a bit better than that.
Yeah, I think back in the day, I used to watch rally and rallycross, and I used to watch British touring cars, and I think the British touring cars was incredible. I stopped watching it years ago, like sort of pre-2000 probably. But that was some incredible racing. But no, I think both of us just kind of watch Formula One at the moment, not because, as you say, it's the best, and we definitely wouldn't advocate it being the best racing.
It's probably got the best marketing team, though, isn't it?
It's definitely one of the biggest series, isn't it?
Well,
so you get kind of swept up in it. I know that, like in America, NASCAR and IndyCar are big. I guess over here, probably Formula One is the bigger racing series, although only the last couple of years it's really sort of blown up.
I was going to mention, I don't know if it's because we live in an echo chamber, because all the content that we like consume is Formula One, but it seems to be the only one you really hear about the most.
Yeah, definitely a bit of an echo chamber.
Yeah,
definitely. But I will say, in actual answer to your question about what is the best racing right now, obviously from our very limited view that we've seen, for me, Goodwood Revival there's this. I don't know if you've seen this. There's a series where they will have American muscle cars against Mini Coopers.
Oh.
And they'll both be racing on track against each other, and it is the most incredible little David and Goliath fight. The most incredible racing I've seen, because the muscle cars will just be rockets on the straights, but then they're absolute boats in the corners, and they're just like, you can see the guys trying to like get around the corners and whatever. And then the minis are super slow on the straights, but they're little rockets in the corners, and it's some of the most fun racing I've seen. I can't believe I'm putting that over F1, but there we go. Give us some suggestions. What if we were to start watching another series for the racing?
How would you introduce a new fan?
Yeah, what should we watch, and sort of where should we get started with stuff like that? Because maybe we'll give it a go.
Yeah, I'm not.
We'll try it. It would definitely, if there's races in between these enormous gaps that Formula One has, it'd give us something to explore. So
100%.
Let us know if you've got any suggestions. Kind of leading on to that as well, we've got another All About IndyCar at All About IndyCar, and I've got a feeling they're a fan of IndyCar, because they're well, I think this is actually an opinion, really. They've basically said, my opinion, IndyCar has better racing than Formula One. We really can't answer it.
So the only thing I can, we don't watch IndyCar. So
maybe we should again.
Clearly we should, because it's come up quite a few times in the questions that we've been sent in. So there's obviously a lot of passion for this. Yeah. But if I'm right in saying IndyCar, and this might be totally wrong, they're all in the same machinery. I think.
I have no idea.
I think.
I don't know. Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because again, I know nothing. I think they are all in almost the same machinery. So I guess just that fact alone probably does promote better racing,
closer,
and more varied. The same person isn't winning all the time. I don't know, maybe. Whereas at F1, obviously, it's a constructors' business. Obviously, Red Bull at the minute have just ran away with it, and it's quite boring, I suppose. If you at the top end, midfield and lowers, quite exciting sometimes. But that's the only thing I would say on that. So it probably does. If I'm right, and they're all in the same machinery, it probably does promote better racing.
Yeah, I will say I've kind of seen highlights of a couple of IndyCar races, and they do look great. I've just never sort of sat and watched an actual IndyCar race, and that's not anything against IndyCar. It's literally just probably time, and just kind of, I think as well, when you when the first few races you'll watch of a different series, you've got no idea who anyone is, and it's really hard to try and pick up on stuff. So we should probably do our homework a little bit and get into something like that. So maybe we'll give IndyCar a watch. I know that the Indy 500 will be later this year. Maybe we'll give that a try, and we'll let you guys know what complete,
what we think,
beginners to IndyCar.
Not that it'll matter to you.
Come to that, but I will also say as well, actually, this isn't a question that's been asked here, but on the illustration side of the Pitlane Collective, loads of people ask, like, can you draw a certain series? And can you draw IndyCar? Can you draw NASCAR? And I'd love to do stuff like that. But again, the reason why I don't draw them is exactly the same reason, in that I don't really watch any other series. And I don't want to feel like, I'd get stuff completely wrong. Like, I'm familiar with Formula One, so I know that, there's little details and stuff I can get in there. That's just, that's kind of where that's come from. So maybe we need to branch out. Maybe we'll give that a go.
Do.
Talking about, coming back into Formula One again, we've got a couple of questions here, which we probably can try and answer. These will probably last quite a while. We'll try and keep them short and snappy. We've got a question from Katie Emmat, who says, do you think Ferrari can make a comeback after the break?
I would say it depends what you mean by comeback.
And what you mean by break.
Yeah.
Like, maybe the break between this season and the next season. they could give it a go. No, all joking aside, yeah. Comeback, I guess she's probably, or he is probably meaning... get back in the fight at the top.
No.
As a diehard Ferrari fan,
I don't think so. I think that would be
it's a huge
unbelievable gap if they did.
Yeah.
But I really can't see that happening in the space of a few weeks.
I think they, like, they've got to probably set their sights on fighting Aston and Mercedes and just try and get.
Yeah, that's what I meant by it depends what you mean by comeback.
Yeah.
Like if you mean the battle for first, absolutely not. Even if you mean the battle for second, probably not really. You're probably looking at third, fourth. You're probably looking around that, which is mad because Ferrari deserve to be so much higher. But
yeah, I would like to see. I do think that they'll be in the mix for the second best at Baku.
Mm-hmm.
I hope they are.
Going on.
I think
just your heart.
Yeah, probably. I think both of them had sort of awful luck, which we've talked about loads in Australia, and the car did look a bit quicker than it has in the previous two. So I hope that they do well.
Upgraded packages are coming as well for Baku, aren't they?
Yeah, that's true as well. So who knows? Maybe they'll pull some sort of miracle, but I don't think either of us really think that they're going to get back in the fight at the top until at the earliest next year.
I don't think there is a fight for the top.
No.
Not this year.
No.
It's a one-horse race.
Just Max. Talking about Max, we've also got a question here from DM0401 who says, if Max retired at the end of this season, who would be the champion in 2024?
Whoever sits in his Red Bull seat the next.
See, do you know what? I knew you were going to say that. It's brutal, isn't it? It really depends who sits in that seat.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I don't think it will happen. I know he's been threatened.
No, it won't. Yeah, no.
But I don't think he will retire. I think he'll be. I think it's all a bit of.
He's bringing out a lot of comments
a bit
recently.
of show in it.
But if he did,
let's answer the question.
Yeah. Who? So
I think the best way to answer this question is if he retired and Red Bull suddenly went crap.
Well, no. Let's say if he just retired and Red Bull sort of kept similar form. And first of all, I guess the question is who'd fill that seat? Who'd go there? Lando was your big call for that. But there's been an interview recently with Zach Brown saying that Lando hasn't got an exit clause.
Yeah. However,
so maybe Red Bull would say pay him out.
He would say that, wouldn't he?
Yeah, maybe.
He's not going to go. Yeah.
Yeah, he can go.
He can go. We're screwed. He's got to say that. I find it hard to believe that any contract is 100% watertight.
Yeah. They'd have to try and buy him out or something.
If Red Bull really wanted him and he really wanted to go, they could make that happen.
Yeah.
It might cost a lot of money, but it could happen.
Basically, Red Bull would be in search for another star driver, and that's brutal to say about Perez, but realistically, they've brought Perez in as number 2.
He's the number 2, yeah.
I do think Perez would have a shot,
because
I think you'd have a new driver who would immediately have to get up to speed with the Red Bull, which might not be easy. We don't know. We've seen Gasly and Albon struggle in previous years, and even Checo struggle for a while. So
I just really fancy Lando for a top seat.
Yeah, I think if you put a top driver, it would never happen. But if you put Lewis in there, if you put Charles in there, which could, if he gets completely sick of Ferrari, just putting the wrong tires on and
could happen,
blowing up. Lando. Is there anyone else? Ricardo,
I was literally just going to say Ricardo, yeah.
Then I think they'd take the fight to Perez, but I think anyone else, Perez would probably have it.
That's Alonso fans either.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think Red Bull would take him, but yeah. So, in answer to your question, who'd be champion? I'm going to go with Perez.
Yeah, that's the on the fairway answer, isn't it?
No, because I think they would get a top driver in, but I just don't think that they'd get up to speed as quick.
Stop sitting on the fence.
Probably Lando.
So would he win or would Perez win?
I think Perez would get in for a bit. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, maybe it's a long old season though, isn't it? To be fair, so maybe bring it back towards the end. I just think you'd have a few races of getting up to speed, and Perez has got that, and Perez would see it as his one opportunity, and he'd go for it.
Yeah.
So, who knows? Perez. What's your thought?
Same.
There we go. So there you go, mate. That's our kind of thought. Who do you think would win it if Max retired at the end of the current season? And the final question that we've got here,
what a segue.
Is will Lando win a championship in the next 5 years? And this is from EZP_77. Will Lando win a championship in the next 5 years? At McLaren?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I also really don't see him at McLaren in the next 5 years.
No.
Depends where he goes, doesn't it? I've said all along I really fancy him for either maybe in Lewis's seat when he retires, maybe, or at a Red Bull seat, maybe even a Ferrari seat, but I don't know why the hell anyone would want to go there at the minute. In 5 years, the landscape might look totally different.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say, but if I had to answer now, I'd say yeah. But only because I've already predicted him in a top team by then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I said no, I'd look pretty foolish on my previous prediction that I've made. So I'll stick with it and go yeah, because I fancy him in one of them teams.
I'm gonna go no, and I feel horrible saying that, but I think back to say 2014-ish, Ricciardo was the driver that everyone was talking about who was going to win a championship at some point, because he was, setting the track on fire. He was doing like crazy overtakes. People were saying as soon as he gets the car, he'll win that championship, and he never got the car.
Never did. Yeah.
I'd hate to see Lando go the same way, but I think
he's good enough.
Oh yeah. He definitely is. But if I'm being brutal,
think he ever will?
I don't know.
Good shot.
Yeah. I really don't know. Oh God, I'd love him too, but I don't know. I don't think so. I think if he gets brought into a top team, he's got a good shot at it. And he's definitely one of the drivers to keep an eye on. But if Piastri does well this year, there's question marks against that. There's a lot of other top drivers moving around at the moment. I think Charles, I think George, Max, obviously. I can't see any of the top teams, the top three, I guess, that we've got. I should have said Alonso as well. I can't see any of those top teams bringing in two number one drivers to compete against each other. So I kind of think Charles is Ferrari don't admit it, but Charles is sort of the number one at Ferrari until he decides to leave. George will eventually be the number one when Hamilton retires. I don't think Mercedes want two top drivers again, because they had an issue with Hamilton and Rosberg years ago, but they didn't have a choice. They've got to bring in the next generation, which is George, and when Lewis retires, I think he'll be number one. And then obviously Max is number one at Red Bull until he decides to go elsewhere. So, and if Aston can hang with the top, Fernando ain't going anywhere either. So really, Lando's options are kind of limited, sort of short term anyway.
Said in 5 years, so much can change.
Definitely, yeah, and it's tough to predict. We've got new engines coming in a couple of years' time. We've got Audi coming in. I'll be honest, I could see him going to Audi. I could see him. I know that the previous team principal, he was team principal of McLaren. Andreas Seidel is over at Audi now. He'll be sort of heading up that, or part of that team. They're building their own engines.
Gamble though, innit, for Lando? Yeah. Do you know if he's really sick of the McLaren, is it worth taking a gamble on a really unknown? Because he'll be, if we're looking, when's that, 2026, so like another 2 or 3 years, whatever. It would just depend on how the landscape looked, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Like, depends what's going on. Max might decide he wants to retire in 2 years' time, and then there's a seat open, and maybe Red Bull just poach him. And if that's the case, then he's got a brilliant shot. But it all just depends, really. It's a tough one. We're probably reading too much into it. I guess I'm saying in the next 5 years, I think it's unlikely, and it hurts me to say that because I'd love to see him win one.
When I said I forgot about the fact that I don't think Max will retire.
Ever.
Well, maybe not in the next 5 years. I don't think he'll have quite the longevity as Alonso's got, but I think 5 years is still
He's contracted till 28, isn't he?
Yeah, so that's about 5 years, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, roughly.
So
Revise it.
Oh.
if Max is still around, no.
Yeah.
And if he's not, maybe.
It depends, because as you say, like if Lewis retires, Mercedes could be like, do you know what, we want to grab Lando now, and we want.
You know what, George is shit. Let's have
see them, but I don't know. I think a lot of the top teams have been going this route of having a supporting driver, and you can see how it works with like, like with Max and Perez a couple of years ago, and both actually Red Bull and Mercedes were using Bottas and Perez as supporting drivers. And if you're a team where both of your drivers are trying to compete with the championship, they're not going to get out of the way and help each other. The team with the second driver that will do that, obviously they're going, one driver's got a massive advantage there, because their teammate will move over and let them take the wins, and they'll maximize the points everywhere. If you've got two teammates fighting each other, I mean, that's the reason why McLaren lost the championship in, I think, 2007. Lewis and Fernando fighting each other, and Raikkonen won it. So I can't see top teams
going that route.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ferrari keep trying to keep Sainz sweet by basically not saying we've got a number one driver, but I think everyone knows that Charles is the driver of the two of them. So yeah, it does depend, but if I'm honest, not in the next 5 years. I'd hate to see him become the next Ricciardo. But if you think about it, all the drivers on the grid now, how many of them deserve championships? There's quite a few. And are all of them going to get them? No, probably not. So
not many do they?
No. I mean, especially, if Red Bull run away with this, which they have now, they've got a massive advantage for next year. All the teams are playing catch up. So I think, God knows, it could just be max domination for the next few years. But yeah,
I'm here for that.
Yeah. There's a lot of moving parts that have got to go Lando's way for him to get into championship contention. He's got to win a race first. I'd love to see him win one. I can't see it, but I could be well wrong, and I'd love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong. That's probably quite controversial, I guess, but that's the last Q&A. So I'm going no, you're going maybe. Yeah. Let us know what you guys think. To all of these questions, we'd love sort of more opinions and stuff. Let us know your thoughts on them. Because we could be well off, and I think we're probably going to have to wrap this one up.
That was us being brief.
Yeah, and get onto some homework, watching some IndyCar. Thanks for all the questions. Genuinely, it we've sat down to do this podcast because we love chatting about Formula One, and sort of, I guess it's going to extend to racing in general now. We've been doing this without the microphones and stuff, but it is really nice to get little comments and little feedback from people and thoughts and little pointers to say, like, chat about this, or
we wouldn't still be doing it if we had none of that.
No, it really gives us a little bit of a boost, and it genuinely, it makes my day when we get like little comments and stuff like that. It's really cool. So please keep them coming, and thank you for doing that. It is really cool. We've got a giveaway running on the page currently.
Lots have already entered.
Yeah, thank you to everyone who's already entered. We've got 50 odd entries already, which is really cool. We're going to give away a Pitlane Collective t-shirt. You get to pick. There's 4 different designs. You get to pick which one you want, and we'll get in touch with you, and we'll sort out the sizing and all that sort of stuff. We're also giving away an A3 print of your choice from the Pitlane Collective store. You can grab whichever you want. And 4 coasters. They can be different designs. They can be the same design. So there's a big old bundle there for you to win. And the only thing you need to do is go over to the Pitlane Collective Instagram and follow that. Go over to the TPC Pod Instagram, follow that, and then just leave a comment and tag a couple of friends. Let us know which things you'd like, and we'll be announcing the result in about 2 weeks.
We're going to announce it on the Baku episode. So, yeah.
So in 2 weeks' time. Get your entries in, and we're looking forward to announcing that.
Yeah, it'll be really cool. I'm glad we got a lot of entries.
Yeah.
We were worried it'd just be one guy entering. Oh well, you've won then.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for everyone for getting stuck into that. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for all the feedback and stuff. We're going to change up the format a little bit in the coming weeks. We've got some ideas around sort of a snappier sort of post-race podcast. We're going to do some things around that.
So the podcast still very much finding itself, finding its feet. We are as well. So yeah, you're just gonna have to bear with us for a bit while we go from one idea to the next and just see what.
Let us know what works,
what format works, and yeah, we've got a couple of cool ideas, haven't we? That we're gonna knock around. And...
Yeah, we're gonna give some stuff a go, and including next week's episode. We'd love to get your thoughts on this. So please send some stuff in. We're going to be talking about Daniel Ricciardo.
A Danny Rick special.
Yeah, we're going to do a Danny Rick special, and we're going to talk about his future.
Yeah, we're going to do a little bit of everything, aren't we? We're going to talk about his brief history in Formula One and where he is now and where he will be. So looking forward to that.
So send in your thoughts. Where's he going to go? And that's kind of it. We've wrapped up everything that we've gone through. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sticking with us.
Yeah.
And
see you next week.
Yeah.
For the Ricciardo special. Bye. Hello, and welcome to the Pitlane Collective Podcast. We're at Oulton Park. Alex is just over there. There he is. It's wet and it's rainy, but it's the British GT. We'll insert some clips just here. But other than that, just enjoy the episode. Yeah.